You're walking a coastal path at dawn, and the world in front of you simply stops existing. 10 feet ahead, nothing. No trees, no horizon, no sound carrying the way it should. Somewhere in that gray wall, a shape moves that might be a person, or might be nothing at all. You can't decide which is worse. Right now, you'd check a weather app, shrug, and keep walking. So what did people do with that same blank wall of gray before anyone could explain it as condensed water vapor? What did ancient humans actually think fog was? Homer gives one of the oldest surviving answers. In the Odyssey composed sometime around the 8th century BCE, he describes a people called the Cimmerians living at the far edge of the world, near the entrance to the underworld. Homer writes that the sun never reaches them at all. They exist wrapped permanently in mist and cloud, in a kind of standing twilight. For a culture without electric light, that wasn't poetic decoration. It was a real geography lesson. Fog wasn't weather. Fog was the border where the living world ran out and something else began. So did every ancient culture treat fog as a threshold into danger? Not the Maori of Aotearoa, New Zealand. The ethnographer Elsden Best, working in the early 1900s and publishing his findings in 1924, recorded a very different explanation tied to the creation story of Ranginui, the Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother. According to the tradition best documented, their children forced the two apart so light could enter the world, separating sky from earth for the first time. Rain, in that story, is Ranginui's tears falling for his lost wife. Mist rising off the ground at dawn is Papatuanuku sighing for the husband she can no longer reach. Fog wasn't an entrance to danger here, it was grief, rising off the ground every single morning. Everyone assumes fog myths across ancient cultures are basically interchangeable fear stories. Mist equals monsters, more or less everywhere. The truth is far less uniform than that. One tradition put a doorway to the underworld inside the fog. Another put heartbreak inside it instead. Iceland took the concept even further back, past the world itself. Around 1220 CE, the writer Snorri Sturluson recorded the Norse creation myth in the Prose Edda. Before anything existed, he wrote, there were two realms, Muspelheim, a land of fire, and Niflheim, whose name translates roughly to home of fog or mist world. Between them sat an empty gap called Ginnungagap. When heat from Muspelheim met the cold mist drifting out of Niflheim, that meeting is what supposedly formed the first living being, a giant named Ymir. In this version, fog isn't just a place at the world's edge. It's one half of the raw material the entire universe was built from. So does that mean nobody in the ancient world tried to explain fog without a god or a giant behind it? Actually, someone did, and centuries earlier than most people assume. Around 350 BCE, the Greek philosopher Aristotle wrote Meteorologica, one of the first known attempts at a systematic, non-mythological theory of weather. Aristotle proposed that the Earth constantly gave off two kinds of exhalation, one hot and dry, one cold and moist, and that fog and mist came from that cold, moist exhalation rising and hanging low when it lacked the heat to lift into a proper cloud. It's not modern atmospheric science, but it's a naturalist trying to explain gray air with cause and effect instead of gods, over 2,000 years before anyone owned a thermometer. Everyone assumes ancient people only ever reached for myth first, and science came along much later to clean up after them. Aristotle was already running that argument in the same century. Some of these same fog myths were still being told as literal truth. So did anyone treat fog as something closer to information than danger or origin story? In China, the scholar Guo Pu, writing in the early 4th century CE, produced a text called the Zhang Shu, or Book of Burial, one of the foundational documents behind what later became known as feng shui. Guo Pu described qi, the vital energy believed to animate the whole landscape, as something that scatters the moment it meets open wind, but gathers and becomes visible the moment it meets water. Mist pooling low over a valley wasn't just weather in that framework. It was qi itself, made temporarily visible, marking exactly where the land's energy ran strongest, and where a person should or shouldn't build a home, or a grave. Everyone assumes ancient explanations of fog were either myth or nothing at all. Guo Pu's version was neither. It was practical, almost architectural, a gray wall you were expected to actually read. None of these explanations were really about water vapor at all. They were about the same problem, answered 5 different ways. What do you do with a world that suddenly refuses to show itself to you? A Greek epic poet put a border there. A Maori tradition put grief there. An Icelandic mythographer put the birthplace of the universe there. A Greek philosopher put a falsifiable guess there. A Chinese scholar put a map there. Go back to that coastal path. 10 feet of visibility and a shape you can't quite identify. You know exactly what it is now. Condensation, temperature, dew point, nothing more. And yet something in you still slows down anyway, still narrows its eyes at the shape in the gray before your rational brain catches up and overrules it. Explaining fog away never actually finished the job. It just moved the doorway from the edge of the map to the edge of your own nervous system. You're on a coastal path at dawn when the world in front of you simply disappears into gray. Long before anyone could explain that as condensation, entire civilizations built explanations for it, and no 2 of them agree. This video traces 5 ancient answers to one question: what is fog, really?